Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I am back from holiday. I am feeling relaxed. I am also rusty on my streaming skills, but I got here on time, even though the music didn't kind of fade in right away. But whatever, we're gonna roll with it. I hope you all are doing well. And yeah, so kind of like getting my stuff set up and set. But I'm ready now. We're gonna talk about another way in which patriarchy ruins things. But that's what you're here for. So thank you very much for showing up. I appreciate your time and attention. I also, before we start on today's topic, want to advertise that I am doing a special double header this weekend. I am going to be doing a chat with a person that I really respect a lot. Their name's Corey. They are, if you know the D&D channel that I have over with Rolling Left, you'll know them from our Sunday games. And we're going to be discussing a topic that I'm more interested in learning about, and Corey has an interest in, which is matriarchy, and also like matriarchy within the context of like academic discussions. Come back tomorrow for that. But today we are going to kind of link up some of the themes here. We've got the notions of toxic masculine norms that we touched on recently. Today we're going to look at a sexist myth that has existed and misled people for decades, if not going on hundreds of years. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about matriarchy. So it's a nice smooth transition, and I'm very excited to be doing all of this. Today's what's the word? Not episode and not issue. I've been doing a lot of work in academia. So my discourse, my vocabulary, my lexicon and thesaurus are a little bit still embedded in that. So today's episode is going to be a little bit longer because I want to do something for the first time that I'd like to do quite often on the show as this series progresses, which is make use of some of the great open open science that exists out there through publications. I actually saw this. We're going to be talking. I'll just switch you over so you can see the title of the article. Oh, there's so many pieces. Okay. Oh, it's hidden behind the YouTube. All right, I got it. Hold on. There we go. Right. When I was on holiday, this news article came across my feed, busting the myth that men were hunters and women were gatherers. I'm also going to do a little on-the-fly editing because my head's a bit cut off. Hey, there's the top of it. It was something that I'd actually mentioned in a prior episode of Why Patriarchy Ruins Everything, and that was the What If Alt History's offhanded comment, based in no evidence whatsoever, that women today don't cooperate because back in prehistoric times, men hunted in groups and had to cooperate, and women didn't. So we didn't learn any cooperation skills. And I question that just on the basis of like resource management, and the whole idea of men as hunters and women as gatherers and child rearers. It just doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about a survival sort of society where like calories are precious, and able-bodied people who consume more calories they contribute doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. So when this article came across my news feed, it just was empirical evidence for my gut instinct of skepticism when it comes to this sort of like bifurcation or the sexual division of labor. What we're going to do is we're just going to do I'll try to keep my commentary to a minimum and let the piece speak for itself. I will occasionally jump into perhaps either explain a term that might not be familiar if you're not in the social sciences. Even if you're in the social sciences, you might not know what an ethnography is, so we can talk about that. And sometimes I'll jump in to say, I don't know a word because this isn't my field. I'm not on that cross section between like archaeology and feminist critique. But to set this up, this article so the title is The Myth of Man the Hunter, Women's Contribution to the Hunt Across Ethnographic Context. Ethnography in this case is ethno, so like one, I don't know, like I don't know what ethno means, but I know what graphic means to write. I should probably look that up. But the ethno part of it means the person who is the observer is also keeping a diary and doing it in a self-aware. Well, they're keeping their own kind of records, their own notes. They know that they're doing it. Like they're maybe making some personal notes as well as notes that they intend to publish later, whatever. But it's the idea of a sort of a first-hand account. And it's more than just like an eyewitness statement because it's a deliberate act of research. You aren't just observing the world casually. You're going out with a specific interest and looking at the world and then making notes on it. And so they're going to use this text-based approach to look for evidence across a variety of groups they'll talk about, to find comments about women hunters. And they're going to link this to other archaeological evidence challenging the notion of a very clean sexual division of labor in prehistoric times leading up to today. So that's it. And I hope you're all very excited. We're going to be listening to the voice of Snoop Dogg with my +1. I've got it set at 1.1, which is about 235 minutes, words per minute. My brain is going faster than my mouth can keep up. If that feels like it's too fast, I'll look a little bit at the chat. Yeah, exactly. Hunting is a group activity, Sib. You're reading ahead. Someone's read for the class. But let me just check the volume on this, because that was the one check I didn't have a chance to do before I went live, which, it's just a time management problem, really. 32 should be loud enough. All right, let's first put on the desktop audio, professional, and then we'll hit play. Yeah, that's not coming out at all, is it? Okay, so, I think I'm going to have to do a display capture, but because I don't know why the audio isn't feeding through automatically. One would think that would be part of the audio capture, but it doesn't seem to be so. Let me see if there's a separate audio. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to try something else. Sorry to do this on the fly, y'all. Should have tested this before Windows capture. And I want to create a new one for today. I'm just going to talk you through this because otherwise I'm going to be sat here in silence. So I'm going to call this one plus to be +1 for the article. Make the source visible. Yes, thank you very much. Oh, look, it worked. Okay, hurrah. And okay. I don't know why the settings popped up on here, but I can take those off. That's fine. We're getting places, people. We're getting places. All right, now let me try backing this up and trying again. I know what the problem is. The volume was down. So let me try turning the volume up. At least I had technical solutions. Okay. Really starting this time.
The myth of man the hunter. Women's contribution to the hunter cross ethnographic context. Abigail Anderson 1. Sophia Chilksick 1. Kaylee Nelson 1. Rock.
All right, so this is all of their affiliations. I just want to check in the chat. I'm going to look over and see whether or not y'all can hear that. That sounds okay. So I know it's a bit laggy, but if you just give me a little thumbs up if the volume is appropriate. And while you do that, I'm just going to say I got a new toy. I'm so excited about. I have to put myself back on the webcam. I have to go up a level. Oh, this is so complicated. So I have a new toy, which is this isolation booth that's set on my microphone. And it's meant to not only kind of isolate the sound of my voice, but also block out a lot of the other background noise. So I hope you're getting a really rich and clear and background noise-free audio experience today. All right, so let's see if I've lagged enough for people to just give me a quick thumbs up. It's a wee bit quiet. All right, that's absolutely fine. I can turn it up a bit so that it's more matched to mine. And we'll go a little bit into the yellow, but better that you're able to hear it. All right, here we go. We'll start with the abstract.
Abstract. The sexual division of labor among human foraging populations has typically been reckoned recognized as involving males as hunters and females as gatherers. Recent archaeological research has questioned this paradigm with evidence that females hunted and went to war throughout the Homo sapiens lineage. Though many of these authors assert the pattern of women hunting may only have occurred in the past, the current project gleans data from across the ethnographic literature to investigate the prevalence of women hunting in foraging societies in more recent times. Evidence from the past 100 years supports archaeological finds from the Holocene that women from a broad range of cultures intentionally hunt for subsistence. These results aim to shift the male hunter-female gatherer pole add-on to account for the significant role females have in hunting, thus dramatically shifting stereotypes of labor as well as mobility.
And I want to emphasize here, too, that this isn't just about notions of, what do they say, stereotypes of labor. This goes to, like, value as well. And I don't want us to take away from the authors. They might make this sort of point as well. But meat and protein in the hunt is considered, at least the way I've always been presented with it, as way more valuable than berries and nuts. Like that was the food, like you were a provider if you brought home meat. And so it's not only about the division of labor, but the value of that labor. Women's labor being undervalued, underappreciated, underregarded, and men's being overly regarded. And I want to, yes, we're talking about labor here, but we're really talking about in many ways, values for individuals and their contributions as well.
Introduction, accepted, May 30, 2023.
Oh, we're going to skip all that and go right to the first paragraph. Sometimes, Spotify's cool, but that 27 minutes, that includes the bibliography and stuff. We're not going to be going over that. So it's a bit more like 22 minutes, probably. Yeah, go.
The notion of separate subsistence roles for females and males in forager societies has been a long-standing paradigm for a wide range of social science disciplines, as well as in the public sphere, and include influential texts such as Man the Hunter 1 and Woman the Gatherer 2. This viewpoint further purports that females engage in the majority of child-rearing activities, which is aligned with the slow-moving pace of gathering. Such assumed sex-specific gender roles in subsistence activities are commonly construed with additional gender traits such as human men being less emotional and more aggressive, while human women tend to demonstrate more nurturing behavior and a focused interest in children.
So the point is, I'm going to kind of zoom out a little bit why this is important. These values, if they're assumed to have happened in the past, they're assigned incorrectly an attribution of normality. And therefore, anything that doesn't look like men, power, status, women, unpaid labor, child rearing, nurturing, small tasks men can't be bothered with, anything that isn't that is called unnatural. And this is because it's then reinforced in the church, in science, apparently, in media, whatever else. We are reproducing patriarchy and indoctrinating patriarchy. The point of this article, as they'll write shortly, is, it's up to every generation to reevaluate the data in light of more understandings and questioning the assumptions of the generation before, especially in the social sciences, just like a cold case file. You get fresh eyes in because there are going to be things that weren't available or thought of at the time or just outside of your scope that you can't consider. And that's a limitation. So you want to get beyond those limitations. Anyway, I'll get back to it, but I'm really excited that we're finally talking about this. I've been waiting almost a month to do this series or do this stream. Okay.
While we have known these patterns are culturally defined and thus variable for over a century now, e.g. 3, 5, it is only recently that the data are building to move a more accurate paradigm of subsistence flexibility into discourse. 6, 8. One of the most prominent discoveries recently includes a 9,000-year-old burial located in the Andean highland area of Willamette, Patriarchy in Peru. 9. The burial included an adult female alongside a hunting toolkit consisting of stone projectiles as well as animal processing equipment. 9. Researchers typically presume that stone projectiles buried alongside males are hunting tools, but are less persuaded when projectiles are associated with females.
Sexism.
The specific assemblage clearly evidenced hunting in this case. In their own review of the literature, Haas et al. 9 examined burials in the Americas from the late Pleistocene to the early Holocene period. identifying 11 females from 10 sites who were associated with big game hunting tools.
Big
By
game.
using a probability analysis of all 27 sites which had evidence of big game hunting, Haas et al. Determined that females made up a non-trivial amount of big game hunters across the Americas 9. In fact, their analysis suggested that females represented up to 50% of big game hunters from the Americas prehistorically. In addition to tools generally...
And like, it makes sense. Okay, let's just step back, right? Because I always, like, I know I didn't necessarily until more recently start to question this paradigm, but let's say you're living in like a forest or a jungle or the plains or something. You and maybe like 50 other people. What, you think like just like half of the people on any given day are just going to sit around and not do anything and consume calories? I mean, I would make the argument that in terms of like calorie production and work, breastfeeding and other nursing stuff that children need, you know, until they are weaned, is a contribution in terms of caloric, distribution. That is a very important job of redistributing, calories to a generation that can't consume it. So I see that as incredibly valuable labor. But then, like, the children are weaned and there's multiple generations of families, presumably, and it's childcare can be collectivized. What, like, just people are going to sit around and do nothing when there's not enough food? Get out of here. Of course, if you're able-bodied and you're talented and you can aim and throw with accuracy, come on along. Because I'm going to guess that in any given situation, going on a hunt, it's not like going to war, right? There aren't necessarily things hunting you back. And so unless there was some sort of rare accident that could probably happen anywhere, I don't know the hunting, especially in a group with tactics, would be any more dangerous than anything else. And, women, okay, yeah, they can't physically carry the heaviest things, but you'd certainly want, if it's just two guys carrying a deer out of the woods, wouldn't you like two ladies along to help? So it just doesn't make sense unless what you're committed to is reinforcing patriarchal structures and norms so as to not make people think that their contributions are the same as yours.
Associated with big game hunting being conferred to males, tools associated with warfare are also consistently assumed to occupy burials of males 10. In 2017, a well-known burial in Sweden revealed an individual alongside weapons and equipment associated with high-ranking Viking warriors 11. The individual was assumed to be male considering the historical interpretation of the prevalence of male warriors, but genomics confirmed that the individual was a female. In addition, archaeologists discovered a 2,500-year-old...
So I'm just going to bump it up because I'm realizing the text is kind of on the screen. It's kind of... So, okay. In addition,
archaeologists discovered a 2,500-year-old burial site that contained 4 females associated with weapons and warrior equipment 12. The age of the females ranged from 12 or 13 years old to 40 to 50 years old and were believed to be a part of the nomadic group known as Scythians 12. Scythian women were warriors and their culture is supported by the fact that 1/3 of the females in this society were buried with weapons 12. The purpose of these anecdotes is twofold. Firstly, researcher bias shapes science's interpretation of data, and
that is a very professional, anti-inflammatory way of saying sexist jerks have been lying to us and feeding us their sexism instead of questioning their sexism. I mean, that's how I see that. Researcher bias shapes science interpretation of data. Well, who has been interpreting the data mostly for, like, since the institutionalization of science as a practice and scientific disciplines being, like, space being carved out? Yeah. This is down to hunter. The myth of the male hunter is the fantasy dream of bourgeois men looking back through time.
Behooves each generation of scientists to ensure that paradigms fit the existing data. Secondly, the number of anecdotes on females taking up weapons and tools interpreted as violent is extensive across time as well as space 13, 14, making such examples more of a pattern of female behavior than anecdotal 10. The discovery and reanalysis of the human burials from a range of geographic and temporal situations has prompted further research into the organizational structure of many Holocene societies. The question of the division of labor being sex biological denotation, often based on external cues like genitalia or gender social denotation, often based on biological cues, but shaped by the intersection of social norms and personal expression specific among human populations, remains insufficiently researched and undetermined. 7.
Yeah, the question of the division of labor is undetermined, instead of just making up your own little story about what happened.
15. Here we aim to close some of the research gap between female and male subsistence roles by gleaning, with as much resolution as possible, information on subsistence strategies among forager groups around the world. Our hypothesis is that the majority, i.e., more than half of hunter-gatherer communities do expect females to contribute to hunting strategies. Such findings would continue the challenge to long-held perceptions of sex-specific gender roles within foraging subsistence labor. 6, 7, 9, 10, 16.
I like this referencing system. I like it. It's less intrusive than names and stuff. All right, so let's just have a quick look here at the chat because you're all making some good comments. Corey, who's going to be on with me tomorrow, is in the chat right now. Hey! It just makes sense for real. Yep. Flint says the pseudoscience of social Darwinism has a lot to answer for when it comes to filtering scientific views of paleoanthropology. True, true, true. Mara writes, surely men were the hunters because they were disposable, whereas women were staying back for breeding purposes. No. No. And again, you're imagining people living in small social groups, right? You wake up in the morning, you have to feed everybody. Yeah, there are some mothers who are going to be nursing their kids, but there are going to be women who are well past reproductive age. There are going to be women who aren't young or aren't old enough, to reproduce, but are healthy and fit enough and can, throw with accuracy. If you hit a deer with accuracy, you don't need that much strength. You just need to get it in the right spot. And those people are consuming calories every single day. So does it really make sense, Mar, maybe you're being ironic, but does it make sense that half of that group would just sit around all day, even though the childcare doesn't require that much labor, and just let have those people not bring in calories? It just doesn't make sense. It extra doesn't make sense, Corey writes, when you factor the main thing that humans do, many others, is for tools, right? So you were sharpening arrowheads and whatnot, right? Mara says, I think it would be daft to assume that it's just men that were fighting, of course. Any able-bodied person would be fit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. I thought you were being ironic. So I was saying that in terms of what the predominant role was in society, not just in terms of saying that women weren't hunters. I get being pregnant is a hindrance, but I think that we tend to impute a way more reductionist view on the past because, again, women were contributors. We know that they also held property in some societies. Matriarchal lineage is the only guaranteed known parentage. You always know who your mom is, in terms of tracing things back. So I think I don't want to reduce it that much. PZ, you're back. Dude, I wrote to you on Twitter and you didn't get back to me. So, call me, or if you're on Blue Sky me, that, so we can read that Evolution of Patriarchy paper together on a weekend with Snoop Dogg's voice, hopefully. Reductionism, my bet noir. So many bad ideas are the product of excessive simplification and the imposition of narrow distinction. Agreed. All right. I'm really glad I took that little break to check your comments. All right, let's go on to their methods, which for those of you who are really into sampling frames, this will be of interest. For the rest of you, don't worry too much about it. Just look for, are they getting a good variety of data sources? And are the ones they're picking, do they have some sort of inherent bias to the way that the data are picked to be, from the sample that would create it? But in honesty, this has gone through peer review, and peer review isn't the best, but at least the method itself should have been reviewed by others for its statistical likelihood and its data quality. So we're just going to kind of go with it for right now.
Methods. The relationship between subsistence activity and gender was compiled by reading ethnographic reports of foraging societies. A list of potential foraging societies along with their location and type of subsistence activity was first constructed using DPlace, the database of places, languages, culture, and environment. 17. This database is based on the Ethnographic Atlas by Louis Benford 18 and contains detailed information on over 1,400 human societies. In order to reasonably sample across geographic areas, 391 foraging societies from around the globe were chosen to investigate further. Of the 391 different societies, the continent, location, ecosystem, and primary subsistence activity were obtained from deep place and recorded. Each foraging society was then investigated by searching through the original references cited in Deep Place 17, Binford 18, and by searching digitized databases and archives. Multiple reports featuring the same foraging societies were read to ensure accuracy and reliability. Of the 391 foraging societies, explicit data on hunting was obtained for 63 of the societies. Fig 1, Table 1. Data used for this study included reports on what, 1, and how hunting occurred in the cultural group. Ethnographic reports needed to include explicit information in the form of tables or sentences that females went on hunting trips and were involved in tracking.
All right, so y'all got it. This is their sampling frame, and they're doing like data collection from these locations. So that's where we are.
Locating animals and helping with the killing if applicable. Given that there is a difference between the phrase women when hunting and women accompanied the hunters, it should be noted that we were looking for phrases along the lines of women were hunting or women killed animals, not references to the idea that women might be accompanying men only to carry the kills home.
All right, so I got lost in the text. Oh, gonna kills home. Oh no. Oh, there we are. Got it. All right, we're back in. I lost my place.
Though obviously this does happen as well, e.g. 19. Specific contributions, such how much killing took place, and total calories from female-only kills were not written about frequently enough to warrant their assessment here. If women were hunting, it was further investigated to see if the hunting was done purposely, whether women would go out with the intention to hunt, or whether women were hunting spontaneously, i.e. opportunistically. This might occur when women may have been doing a different task, but if the opportunity arose, they would kill an animal.
And if you notice this research design, what's really good about it and thorough is that they're looking for alternative explanations. So they're already thinking about different ways women's hunting could be explained by factors that aren't analogous to the kind of hunting we associate with men. So they're pre-identifying those kind of categories and looking for those in the data and pulling those out because, okay, those are contributions, but if you want to protect yourself against the charge of, oh, well, anytime a woman just came across a rabbit and she wasn't hunting, but she happened to have a bow on her, that's not really hunting, right? So by being the most conservative you can in your claim, saying, hey, I'm doing a sort of a one-to-one analysis. We're trying to look for real parallels in terms of women's expected contributions to hunting work. And then they can differentiate between all of these different types of activities that other people could challenge. So I really like that. I think that's how you should do it.
This was determined by explicit statements in the published literature or by a judgment based on the descriptions. Women's involvement in hunting was determined by written documentation explicitly stating that women were hunting in that particular foraging society or were excluded and in some instances even forbidden to hunt. The most important subsistence activity was also compared to the relative frequency of women hunting. Additionally, the type of the game hunted was assembled into 3 categories of small, medium, and large. The type of game was defined by Fig 1, world map of the locations of 60.
Okay,
the map is in the relative size of the prey. Hunting toolkit that was used, or if size was explicitly stated in the literature. For example, when looking at the Tiwi Society of Australia, a study reported that Tiwi women regularly hunted small animals while the hunting of large game was a man's activity, suggesting that women were involved in hunting small game only 20. In instances where the type of game was not explicitly stated, it was determined from other clues in the report. For example, accounts of the Matses from the Amazon state that the women would strike their prey with large sticks and machetes, which would account for large game, whereas other societies had documentation of small digging sticks or the killing of rodents, suggesting the prevalence of small game hunting. 21. The prevalence of women hunting with children and dogs was also recorded and analyzed based on statements in the literature. Compiled data were analyzed to determine the frequency of females hunting, the type of hunting accomplished, as well as the relative size of game.
All right, we're not going to have him read out the table. So we're going to skip that. But there is the table. You can go look at yourself. This is an open access article published in PLOS ONE. And so now we're going to move on. As I said, it shouldn't be like 27 minutes. So we're moving on now to the results. Click, 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 click. Oh, maybe I have to hit play.
Table 1. Cultural groups.
No,
foraging societies grouped by continent.
Why are you doing this? Hold on a second. Now it doesn't want to. I have to fast forward.
Bofi, Southwest Central African Republic, Lupa.
Oh, no, this sucks. I got to figure out a better way to do this.
Australia, David 1000.
Ugh. So this is somewhat of a successful first test of using Speechify, but to be honest, it could use a little bit of smoothness. I'm hoping that by resetting
Australia, Marjora, Western Australia, OD 1000.
Yeah, there we go. Now it's reactivated. I think I was kind of playing around with other things before, so it might be. Let's get the text size back up again, because I think it's easier for y'all if you can actually read it. All right, here we go.
Results. Data were compiled from literature on 63 different foraging societies across the globe. These included 19 different foraging societies from North America, 6 from South America, 12 from Africa, 15 from Australia, 5 from Asia, and 6 from the Oceanic region. Fig 1 and Table 1. Of the 63 different foraging societies, 79% of the groups had documentation on women hunting. Of the 50 societies that had documentation on women hunting, 41 societies had data on whether women hunting was intentional or opportunistic. Of the latter, 87% of the foraging societies described women's hunting as intentional, as opposed to the 12% societies that described hunting as opportunistic. In societies where hunting is considered the most important subsistence activity, women actively participated in hunting 100% of the time. The type...
That's just a line at the end of a paragraph, and you can skip over it, but I think it's really important. In societies where hunting is considered the most important subsistence activity, women participated in hunting 100% of the time. So there is no sexual division of labor here. What you have is, maybe it'd be better to call it differentiation between hunting activities based on what is the most important subsistence activity in that area or to that group, which is a way more nuanced and honestly plausible way of thinking about previous activity. All of this just makes sense. What doesn't make sense is sex-based division of labor. So, all right, let's keep going.
The game women hunted was variable based on the society. Of the 50 foraging societies that have documentation on women hunting, 90% societies had data on the size of game that women hunted. Of these, 46% hunt small game, 15% hunt medium game, 33% hunt large game, and 4% of these societies hunt game of all sizes.
Now, what we don't have here, which is kind of, okay, at some point you have to stop the scope of your article. You can't do everything in a single article. But these distributions are without context. So we want to say we don't know what the distributions are in terms of men's behaviors in these societies. I mean, the data itself is opportunistic. It's, what we've got out there. But it would be nice maybe in a follow-up article if they have information on percentage of time men spent on small game hunting or medium game reports, that kind of stuff. So right now, what we have is that women were hunting. This is what really the data is establishing. We can't do comparative work with men's activities. You can't assume that men only did the big game hunting or never did small game hunting or whatever. We just don't have the data. So on that, we have to remain silent because we just don't know. But a lot of myths are being busted here, and a lot of our, I think, societal preconceptions and fairy tales about the sexual division of labor, and especially on what is normal and what is natural, which then transcends, in theory, our ability to criticize it or to transform it or radically transform it. It's supposed to be kept on a shelf because it's supposed to be this sort of special, pure nature activity. Nah, man, that's just a lie. That's a lie.
In societies where women only hunted opportunistically, small game was hunted 100% of the time. In societies where women were hunting intentionally, all sizes of game were hunted, with large game pursued the most. Of the 36 foraging societies that had documentation of women purposefully hunting, 13% reported women hunting with dogs, and 50% of the societies included data on women purposefully hunting with children. Women hunting with dogs...
Damn, that's badass! I'm sorry. That's badass. Well, I guess it makes sense. If you're out, you're doing your business, you're doing your stuff, right? You're out, I don't know, let's say you're collecting berries and nuts in the woods, and you see a rabbit going by, and you got your baby on your back. That's badass. Like, I'm sorry. I love that. Like, and that's an idea that literally never occurred to me until like reading this article about a woman like multitasking, taking care of a kid, gathering food, and opportunistically taking in some protein as it hops along the road or whatever. That's badass, man. That's badass.
Dogs and children also occurred in opportunistic situations as well. Discussion. Here we investigated whether noted trends of non-gender hunting labor known from the archaeological record continued into more recent ethnographic periods. The descriptive sample described here is sufficient to warrant the conclusion that women in foraging societies across the world participate in hunting during more recent time periods, a finding that makes sense given women's general morphology and physiology. 16.
They're being so polite. They're being so polite. Look, women can walk and, use their arms and aim at things in the distance and carry things. Nothing physically prevents them from hunting other than your sexism. And again, we're linking this to prehistoric activities where we know women were hunting, and we're looking at societies where hunting is still a big part of the caloric intake. And yeah, like there's no difference. Because in a survival situation, I think it was Mar in there, and what would matter is not what would matter is not your biological sex. It will be more to do with your fitness and your conditioning, So, because look, we're so, sexism turns the brain off. White supremacy turns the brain off. All these critical thinking abilities that we have. It just goes, well, men hunt, women gather.
80. The prevalence of data on women hunting directly opposes the common belief that women exclusively gather while men exclusively hunt. And further, that the implicit sexual division of labor of hunter/gatherer is misapplied, given that this bimodal paradigm has influenced.
I would really hope that this kind of research, I'm going to say it mid-word because I don't want to lose this point. I really hope that any of those sort of dioramas or things that you find in museums, coloring books, or archaeological stuff on prehistory, that they go and put a baby in the guy's arms and put a spear in the woman, so that everyone's got babies and spears and fishing hooks, because that's what it looked like. That's what it looked like. And just seeing that sexual division of labor on a subconscious level from childhood indoctrinates you into a set of norms about your role based on the sex that people are assigning you, or you assign yourself, and there's lies, and we can't reinforce these in our institutes of education. Like, our science books need to not have these pictures in them. Our museums need to not have these assumptions built into their education. We need to unpack this and destroy this myth, not reinforce it, because it's too expensive to re-equip the prehistoric man cave part of the museum display.
It's the interpretation of archaeological evidence, which includes the reluctance to distinguish projectile tools found within female burials as intended for hunting or fighting. 9/10/81. This paper joins others in urging the necessity to reevaluate archaeological evidence,
True.
to reassess ethnographic evidence,
True.
to question the dichotomous use of hunting and gathering,
Which
and to deconstruct the general.
Yeah. Like, hunting and gathering is better as a phrase than hunters and gatherers, because then at least you're moving from assigning roles, distinct roles, to talking about hunting and gathering. I kind of think about it as an activities together, but there's still that implied sexual division of labor. So maybe finding a better foraging, hunting, and gathering just to throw people out of that linguistic dichotomy would be not a bad thing. So I'll take that on. I think that's good to think more than just about what is a convenient term and what is a revolutionary term that challenges the accepted paradigm in a sort of Kuhnian sense, as in Kuhn's scientific revolution set, right? But was it the something of scientific revolutions? I can't remember the first, but yeah, in that way, we need to break down the paradigm completely.
And the hunter narrative. 6/7/80. Based on the data supporting the existence of female hunters, certain skills and practices within foraging societies allow women to be successful hunters. Of the 63 foraging societies with clear descriptions of hunting strategies, 79% of them demonstrated female hunting. The widespread presence of female hunting suggests.
And here's the other thing: is that evidence of absence is not absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. Wow, I mangled that. But here's the thing: is just because the person doing the ethnography in those other societies where women hunting wasn't mentioned, maybe I'm going to assume it's mostly guys, just wasn't on their radar. Like they were discounting it, or they didn't see it, or they didn't include it for some because they were looking at an activity that didn't include this. So, I mean, again, we're using these ethnographic accounts. They're not survey data. They don't go and ask everybody, you know, how many hours a day do you spend on X, Y, and Z. We're just talking about observations, and for those that had these observations, what did they observe? Doesn't necessarily mean that women didn't do any hunting in the societies for which we don't have data. And in fact, the overwhelming majority and all the rational outcomes would make you think that when it made sense to keep, to have someone doing it, you would have it. Like, why wouldn't you? Where would be a societal condition where you could just go, no, ladies, you all just sit down. We're going to go hunt. And then you just pick the berries and then we're going to sit down. Like, tell me what kind of society you'd need for that, other than in more prehistory.
Yes, right. That females play an instrumental role in hunting.
And not just in prehistory, sorry, but in these more modern cultures as well.
Further adding to the data that women contribute disproportionately to the total caloric intake of many foraging groups 15, 28, 82, 83. Additionally, over 70% of hunting done by females is interpreted as intentional, meaning that females
we kind of lost our highlighting function again. I don't know when that happens, but
play
it's
an
sort of
active
annoying.
and important role in hunting and the teaching of hunting.
I'll use my
even
pointer
if they
to
use
tell you where
different
we
tools
are
and employ
in case you get
different
lost.
acquisition strategies. For example, among the ACA, women's participation in net hunting was required, whereas men's participation was not. 28. These data suggest that females not only prepare to hunt and actively pursue game, but also that they are skilled in the practice. This is supported by both the existence of a specialized toolkit as well as distinct strategies compared to their male counterparts, potentially relating to different training regimes, as well as different cultural norms surrounding the hunting, processing, and eating of meat, e.g. 24. For example, the tools used by active women from the Philippines are remarkably different compared to active men. 21, 84. Whereas active men heavily rely on a consistent strategy of bow and arrows. 84. Women are much more likely to have personal preferences and show variation. Some women prefer hunting only with knives. A few women use bow and arrows, and others use a combination of the two. 84. Among the Aka, women are also flexible, carrying nets, but also spears, machetes, and crossbows. Even when nets are primarily used in hunting, sometimes women will wield the nets and sometimes men will wield the nets. 28. In addition to weapon choices, women further employ a greater flexibility of hunting strategies compared to men. For example, women hunt with a variety of partners, including their husbands, other women, children, dogs, as well as hunting alone. 7, 21. In contrast, men primarily hunt alone, with a single partner, their wife, or with a dog.
We have this myth of the guys all go out and they do their tactics and they're all cooperating and all their male bonding. Well, this data kind of is at least counter evidence to that. I'm not saying that this particular distribution of social activity hunting is universal, but it certainly puts paid to this idea of all the tactical and the brains and the smart and the brawn that is implied in that hunter myth.
18, 22. Among the active, women might hunt in teams and largely hunt during the day, though they might also hunt unaccompanied. 84. Active men predominantly hunt alone or with one other person if they are hunting at night in the forest. 84. Further, dogs are important to active women hunters, while the men typically only are accompanied by dogs when also hunting alongside women. The number of available dogs is a crucial factor in determining the frequency of active women hunters, in which a minimum of 3 mature dogs are typical for success. 84. Among the ACA, the size of the hunting net and the range of travel can depend on what else the women are carrying, whether a child is present, and whether they also have a basket 28, as might be expected.
Again, I just can't get over how badass these women are. Like, I just kind of assumed, you wouldn't take your kid with you. You'd leave with grandma or their aunt or with your cousin, whatever, right? Because you want to, no, just like gonna go out do my job and I'm gonna hunt at the same time. That's way more fic. I'm gonna say that's so much more impressive than just going out by yourself. So much more impressive. Like all the stuff you have to organize, like 3 dogs, your kid, your weapons. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Based on both tool and technique specializations, females maintain specializations for certain animals. American Cree women hunt pelt animals alone and in groups 24. Additionally, Mbuti women from the Congo hunt using nets 7, and Aka women also hunt using nets, more than men hunt using nets. The difference between these two populations is that among the Mbuti, women usually are fleshing out the game, whereas among the Aka, women are usually capturing the game 28. The Akaju/home women participate in hunting by tracking 7. The Peruvian Matsis and multiple Aka women actively hunt with their husbands in order to increase overall hunting yield 75. Given that social norms determine how tools are made, and by whom 85, these specialized skills warrant much more attention by the literature. This would allow information on exactly who and how the tools are made, as well as to whom and how skills are being disseminated, can be used to uncover the means by which tasks are taken on by all the members of a group.
Yeah, instead of just assuming every piece of weaponry in a gravesite is for a man. I mean, some are smaller and some are bigger and some are wider. Maybe think outside the box.
86. Suggestions that children are put in danger by accompanying hunts 74 can be mediated with current literature on the numerous ways in which infants and children are carried during expeditions by parents and alloparents. The importance of infants remaining with adults versus being parked is an important part of our lineage. 87, 88, with children accompanying the wide range of expeditions consistently evidenced in the archaeological 89, as well as the ethnographic record 90. Data explicitly mentioning that infants are carried while hunting exists for the Aka 91 and the 192,
That's so badass.
as well as for foraging bouts that might result in opportunistic hunting, e.g. among the Badik 93 and Nukek 94, among both the Hads and the Aka. Children potentially as young as age 3 accompany adults on over 15% of hunting trips. 95. The idea that women are hindered by childcare and thus cannot hunt is an area where increasing data collection and thoughtful interpretation is lending a much richer lens to our understanding of human mobility strategy.
Again, this is so polite. That is such a polite way of saying, oh my God, you sexist jerks. Stop treating women as if like having a child is a permanent life disability and that they just get taken out for like, a decade or 2 decades of their life. Like, respect women's work, respect their contributions. And that's what patriarchy inherently is like, it's sort of instructionally designed to do, is to demean the feminine and police the masculine, and to impose a false binary, and to try to control sexual activities, identities, and preferences.
Women in
Orientations is a better word. Sorry.
foraging society.
Sexual preferences are sometimes can range, so I don't want to put it in that group. Whereas like an orientation, same sex, like pan, straight, that's a better for the triad of words I just put together there.
Communities across the world historically participated and continue to participate in hunting regardless of childbearing status. The collected data on women hunting directly opposes the traditional paradigm that women exclusively gather and men exclusively hunt, and further elucidates the diversity and flexibility of human subsistence cultures. 96. Because the hunter/gatherer paradigm has prevented the recognition of contributions by women to hunting, a new framework would enable past and future discoveries to be evaluated in the context of female hunters. Furthermore, the term forager, as suggested by Brightman 24, should be used to acknowledge the non-sexual division of labor concerning hunting and gathering in order to develop an inclusive framework for understanding human culture. 9.
All right. You convinced me. You've convinced me Brightman's onto something. And I will take on their suggestion and make an effort to replace my default hunter-gatherer references with a forager reference, and then explain why we shouldn't use hunter-gatherer anymore, because it's inaccurate and sexist and just goes to reproduce sexism. So, this was so nice that I didn't have to read this out myself. I'll just scroll up again to the top. Now that you've heard it, in case you want to recommend it to someone else, I did put the title and the links to the open access article in the description box below. But yes, it's called The Myth of Man the Hunter, Women's Contribution to the Hunt Across Ethnographic Contexts. And I'm going to mute myself for a quick second here because I have to cough. All right. Well, yeah, I like open science, and there's a lot out there that's interesting to me, and I really would like to use this series as an opportunity to get out feminist critique. That's actually what this was. We just read feminist critique. They didn't cite any feminist theorists. They didn't mention the word feminism once. In fact, you get the sense that they know they're tiptoeing around a fragile male, but that kind of thunderfoot, fragile male of STEM, because they're criticizing all of the sexism that has come before them without ever actually saying the word sexism or bigotry or misandry or anything, or misogyny or anything like that, which sometimes you have to police your language to be heard by your oppressors, which is unfortunate, but it is a strategy that people do employ. And so, I'm going to wrap it up now because I want to keep these shows to usually a half hour, and I'm definitely not at that anymore. But don't worry. Besides changing the screen a little bit, I am going to be back in 27 hours or so, and we're going to have a discussion about matriarchy with Corey. Again, really looking forward to that. But before I go, I want to just acknowledge a couple more comments in the chat, and then we'll be on our way. Now, I did notice that you could hear the car, the back engine, or the motorcycle, whatever it was. I could hear that through my noise-canceling headphones. So, someone made a comment, and I tried to put a thumbs up to it ages ago, and now it's just, I can't figure out how to get. All right, just watched Barbie. They didn't police. Sorry, I have to stress. There's a heart in the way of my thing. I can't see. It's really annoying, actually. And I can't. Blah, 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 blah. They didn't police our language at all. Yes, and I saw that Barbie annoyed Ben Shapiro, which automatically makes me like it more. So, Flint says, basically women foragers did the same stuff men did, but backwards and in high heels, in paleo high heels. Basically, yes. So Faye is talking about the social construction of like Western people and how a lot of times that's been imputed on other cultures, which I can't, yes. It's also super racist, being used to belittle non-white people societies. Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing that they, I think, also didn't really engage with, again, because of you only have a certain word count, you can only take on so much. But there's multiple implicit criticisms. The feminist critique, and there's also like racial critique, or critiques of racism in there. Let's see. PZ Myers. Okay, then we're down to it. I see Bruce is in the chat. Always good to see you, Bruce. Hi, good to see you. And yeah, Poma Sid. It has been a while. I appreciate you coming back. All right, you couldn't see any of that because I didn't have the right screen on, but I was reading your comments, and I do appreciate you guys coming by and being nerdy with me. Again, I'm going to be back at, well, it's going to be 7 o'clock my time Sunday, and it's currently going on 3 o'clock, so do the math where you are live. If it's pre-recorded, it's too late. Just hope that it already aired and look for that on the channel. But until tomorrow, then, I'm going to wrap it up, keep this one short and sweet, not going to natter too much more than I already have. And I guess until tomorrow, I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and attention. There is an active link to the Discord for the Patriarchy Ruins Everything Discord group below, and that's active until next week, Saturday, I think. So if you want to join, it's a very small community, very inactive community. There's no pressure to participate. There's also not going to be a lot of content. But we will talk to you tomorrow. I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Until the next time I see you, have a great good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever it is and wherever it is.